Whenever you're ready.
I'd like to call to order this planning commission meeting this Monday, November the 21st, 5 p.m. Our first order of business is invocation. Mr. Nix, if you would, please.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, that they may return home safely to their families after every shift. We also ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Ms. Spicer, if you will lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
Okay. My agenda back out here. You have before you the minutes of our November 7th meeting. Do I hear a motion to accept?
Do have one change when we get to that.
So moved. Second.
All right, is there any changes, corrections?
9B, it had said that I said that people should have the ability to determine their lot size. That was actually dealing with HOAs. I was saying that people live in different HOAs and that they choose those HOAs based on the restrictions they're comfortable with. And that people should have the right to live somewhere that's self-imposed, that with the second sentence, that the appearance shouldn't be the sole reason for the change. But it was not dealing with the people should pick their lot size or be able to control their lot size. It was they control the restrictions with which they live.
You okay just deleting from express to the end of the sentence? And he does not agree that the appearance is sole reason for the change of the ordinance?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Be easier.
We have, we do the motion as amended or just?
Who seconded?
David.
Okay,
David.
all right.
All right. All those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Unanimous.
Okay. Public comment. Mr. Chris Rowan.
Good evening. I want to talk a little bit about zoning, and I know you guys have a strict 4 minutes, so at the very end, I have significant 3 recommendations to help. So if you bear with me and try not to take the time away when I'm just talking about background. I'm not criticizing. I'm giving basically what the reality that we're living with. I'm a GE 30-year retiree. I had a consulting company. I relocated 11 times in my career. My consulting specialization was failing high-risk projects for ex-GE leaders for my consulting company. I developed 12 acres unrestricted. I restricted it myself before I sold it. When I bought it, I actually had an offer double the money. They were going to put 40 to 45 mobile homes on it on Stokes Road across from 2 lake subdivisions. The road never could have handled it. I could have made money faster, but I knew it would be a mess, so I didn't. I made money, but that's one of the things I did. I've been in Oconee since 2007. I live on Lake Kiowee. Zoning is a very touchy issue. In 2009, I brought it up. I talked about creating manufacturing corridors, areas safer for kids when they get off their buses. It was met with a lot of resistance. I actually got a death threat. The guy got arrested, it was taken care of. So what I want to do is, and keep in mind, I'm just giving you guys some thoughts because when I look at this, the commission is paralyzed. You guys are a lightning rod for any type of criticism without any power. So the buck really kind of stops with the council, so you kind of get tepid help there. You guys are the ones that get blamed. But the problem is there. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the one thing I wanted to say that I don't know, I do know Frankie, and I did apologize to him before I made a comment on Facebook that I felt strongly about. He was very mad, and now we're best buds. So what I want to understand is, I want to congratulate the guy. People had the courage to speak out in these articles in the Journal. The 15th, the 20th, and then there was one, a quote from Mac Mahan when he was jazzing everybody up in zoning. So when I look at these quotes, and I apologize, I don't know Pat Williams, which,
He's not
Okay.
here with us.
he expressed concern about the significant high-density subdivision growth, limited ability to address the impact on agricultural lands and other areas. Coley said he couldn't discern if land extending from one of the subdivisions was developable. Where's he?
Me.
Okay, that's a red flag. Well, Smith said, well, we see a problem, we're not addressing the problem. We're not planning for the future, we've been kicking the can for 5 years. Commissioner Mike Johnson said, people talk about both sides of property rights, but only judge it when called by a different name. What it comes down to is, are we going to zone this private owner so that he can no longer sell to a developer when we just refused him and taken away his proper rights to develop the best? And then I'll just leave with this one. So according to the county's planning and zoning information, Oconee implemented a citizen-initiated zoning enabling ordinance in May 2009. Okay, so basically that means if neighbors get together, I'm assuming it means if they agree they want to zone, is that correct? Okay, so good luck getting anybody to agree 100%, so that's not gonna happen. I think homework and broad ideas brought to the table is not a bad thing. This is too big a subject for 2 or 3 people to knock around. Actually, I think it's too big for the commission. So, the issues are, like I said, citizens have a false sense of security. Because there's a commission, they feel like it's all being taken care of, and we know it's not. All these years in business, when I have this responsibility, if you start seeing some of these red flags pop up, the problem's a lot worse than what you're reading here. I mean, I know that. I mean, I just know it. So, the county planning is paralyzed due to political intimidation tactics and false narratives. Property rights and zoning takes land from farmers. I've been accused of that by David McMahon, okay? I don't want land from farmers, but the point is, people now accept that, and they think that all zoning is gonna take land, okay? So, the county council controls what's gonna happen across this county. You guys are the lightning rod. But the problem is, there's no penalty. People don't want zoning, they don't understand what it means, but they don't understand what the penalty is if they don't do the proper planning. So the results are gonna be, you're gonna have infrastructure implosion, utilities, police, fire, it's gonna happen. I think it's gonna cost you guys around 75 to 125 million bucks over 10 years. And it will be there. So that $60 million budget's not gonna cut it, and people will not believe what it's gonna cost. And there are gonna be people in this county, they're gonna lose their homes. And that's a fact. So let's talk about Woodruff Road. I'm the one that started basically harping on that. It's a big deal, $121 million for one road. One person said, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. It's all commercial. It's not all commercial. My wife grew up on Rocky River Road, right off of Woodruff. They have 10 high-density subdivisions. These guys can't even get out anymore. That area is horrible, and they're spending $121 million in tax dollars just to build another lane. That's not gonna do anything. So, here are the recommendations. You guys have to explain to people what the penalty is. That's your air cover. You need a professional report out articulating costs to not plan properly. I don't think you can do it other than getting with some urban planners. It's gonna cost money. You have to get council to approve it. But what's gonna happen is they're gonna come in and you can even negotiate the contract or whatever, well, if we sell it, you guys can be the urban planners. But what they're gonna do is you can have a very easy executive summary and you can be very, very honest with citizens. If we don't do this, this is what's gonna happen. And the only thing that makes sense to them is what it's gonna cost them in a penalty. Losing their house, doubling their taxes, or whatever. Right now, everybody doesn't want anybody to tell them to do anything because they don't care, because there's no penalty, because you guys are covering it. So, the next thing is, you have a citizens' reviews and you get buy-ins. That's not gonna be easy, but it's a lot easier, at least you have something to hang your hat on, because at that point, you put the monkey on the council and the people's backs. You know what you're gonna face, this is what's gonna happen, we know you don't want it, what do you wanna do? Because if we leave it the way it is, it's gonna blow up on you. The key is, you can't do it on, you gotta have professionals, because if you try to get some people locally, they're gonna try to do it, they're not gonna pay that much attention. They're gonna say, oh yeah, they're basically politically motivated. You need a professional. And the other thing is, you're gonna need money, buy-in, and you're gonna need ownership. Too many people get into these projects, and they hire somebody, and they send them over, hey, work with this guy over here. Nobody's got skin in the game, and then they come back, they don't understand what the plan is, what the issues are, and they end up blaming the consulting company when it doesn't work. The consulting company is just a bunch of talking heads that have the expertise that you don't have. I used a lot of consulting companies when it was expertise that I had a problem with. So that's basically in a nutshell what I talk about. And I look at that, I was really surprised about that threat I got. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was very simple. I even mentioned in a letter to the editor about kids getting into an area where there's a distribution center being built on unrestricted land and trying to ride their bikes or be on a bus. But when I was working in Mexico, and I was at a bar one time, a guy thought I stepped in front of him. He was a cartel member, and he said he was going to shoot me. And I said, what? He said, you stepped in front of me. I said, I didn't. But what ended up happening, I stepped back and said, yeah, go ahead. And he ended up buying me and my 11 friends drinks that we were celebrating. So, but that scared me. This didn't. But this is just crazy. So do you guys have any questions? I mean, I'll field your, as long as you don't cut me off at the 4 minutes. I mean, I'll answer any questions, any in-depth questions you want.
Would you mind leaving your telephone number in case we want to get back in touch with you?
Yep, no, that's not a problem. Frankie has it. Okay. You don't have, I'm surprised.
At this time, we'll
Okay, all right, but let me ask you one question. So did I hit the target right in what's going on?
I think you were close.
I mean, it's not, I mean, believe me, when I was working and I couldn't get funding for something and I survived for 30 years, what I would do is I always say, here's what we gotta do, and if we don't do it, this is how much it costs. And my boss always knew what I was doing. I was covering my back, because if that thing went, what you did, would go belly up, I say, hey man, don't look at me, you wouldn't give me the money. And I actually used it one time. It was about $1 million problem, and they were coming after me hard, and then I gave it to them, and they went away, and they fired my boss. Hell, that was back in the 90s.
When you make those statements, do you have data to back up what you're saying?
What, the money, when I said the money?
Yeah, it's gonna cost $1 million or
No.
whatever.
I'm pulling that out based on looking at what's happening in Greenville, looking around the county and what I'm seeing right now in these articles, looking at what infrastructure, I know what infrastructure costs about. And when you look at what's happening, people get weird about the lake. The lake is not where the target is. The target's out here, right out everywhere. That's where those high-density subdivisions are going in. That's what people want. They use the target, so people say, hey, we're not touching that. Oh, good, when it's happening all over here. And these developers coming in, they don't care. I mean, they're not bad guys. They got to make a buck. But you don't have to really restrict things hard. You just need to make sure you understand what the plan is, and you got to stick with it. So when you're building this growth, you'll never stop people from coming in this area. You know, some people think they will, but no, they're not. They're coming in regardless, and they're going to keep building, they're going to keep building. You'll never stop it. So when you look at the dollars, you use, like, say, just look at the, what was the building we just had? I mean, Dave, you'd know that probably. That where it was, how much was it, that just came out in the newspaper, how much we were spending, the surprise? What was it? It escapes me.
Wasn't it Sewer South?
Wasn't there something that just got approved and they were surprised?
the substation.
Oh, the substation
what?
at Bounty Land.
Yeah, how much did that
I
go
think
up?
I think you're also thinking of the sewer project, Sewer South.
Well,
It was-
there's
it was
two
12 it was
that I
12
just
million.
read.
Yeah, the
That,
substation.
that was in the headlines this week.
Yeah, so the Bounty Land Fire Station, the
Last
first
week.
quote was from 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So now they're looking at today's dollar, it was 500,000, now I think it's 1.2 million.
Yeah, think of that. So magnify that times the whole county. And doing something like this, these are very basic steps to get out of the paralyzation that's coming in the county. They're not easy. You can put money in front of people and they're still gonna fight it, but I can guarantee you what's gonna happen. When you have citizens knowing that they're gonna end up, because everything rolls back to the taxpayers, they're gonna have to pay for it. That infrastructure is not free. But once they know that it can happen, you start changing minds. I think you're a realtor, right?
I am.
Yeah. We don't like restricted property, you know that. You make a quicker buck when you sell unrestricted, right?
It depends, not necessarily, but
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I've been working with Melanie for years on different acquisitions, and, yeah, people like it. Hey, it's freedom, you can do what you want. But, you know, when you get to the lake and some of these places are restricted, you know, people will deal with it. They're not gonna leave the area. They are not going to not come to Oconee because of that. That's just a game that some, not you, but some realtors say, oh, you do that, you're gonna drive them away. That's not gonna happen. That's BS. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got my number if you guys wanna call, and I'll make another deal with you. If you're gonna do something like that, and you're gonna need somebody that's going to help, I'll volunteer, I'm not gonna charge a thing. I will help the planners to make sure that everybody has skin in the game and they're not letting the consultants run everything. I'll help you. Now, I'll even do the presentations for you. I don't have a problem with that. I'd much rather tell the truth than not have the support. You guys just don't have the support. The county will pay attention too, because at that point, who's gonna deny it when there's that kind of money? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'm sorry, but I'll probably butcher this. I think it's P. Johnson? Okay, sorry.
I have a very simple problem compared to him. I'm Pat Johnson, P. McGowan Johnson in the art world. I own Liberty Lane, the Liberty Lodge, the former bed and breakfast. It's now private. I didn't think the house would hold up to too many more of the years of bed and breakfasting, so we have bought it. We moved from Houston, where I know all about all of that, and I could tell you a few stories. And this is just a little teeny tiny matter, and it has to do with your junkyard ordinance. I'd like to, and if you don't mind, I'll read it because it wouldn't be easier for me. I'd like to address the council regarding the subject at hand. I live on Coffee Road in what is known as Liberty Lodge, a former B&B, and we have owned it since 2017. My husband, who's a civil engineer, involved in lots of those kinds of projects that he's talking about. He's really smart and cute. There's a 1/10 acre business that has overflowed its boundaries to such an extent that they are up against the roadway, parking across the roadway in the road right away, and also on my property, up and into my driveway. These are cars and trucks that are workers of the business, and also derelict cars that have been left to be serviced by the owner. He's a diesel man. One is a UPS truck that has sat there since 2017. One car with no hood has a tree growing out of it. A true Southerner once said, if you mow and find a car, then you forgot you had. You might be a redneck. This is proof that the problem has been long-standing. I would just like to know if there is any government here that is interested in this unsightly and frankly dangerous situation. I can't see out my driveway. It seems not. There is evidence that there has been no intervention by any public entity to stem the situation. Can that be true? The owner is moving in a couple of months. He has agreed to tow and crush all unclaimed vehicles on my property and on his, and clean up the oil by digging it out. They have a person that knows how to do that, used to work for the Army, so they know about clearing and remediating the damage. I'm inclined to believe him, but with a little trepidation after all this time. I just want to know who on this council he might be related to allow this situation to continue. Is he the sheriff's cousin or something? The previous owners expressed similar complaints, so it's a long-term problem. I don't know how long it's been going on. If you allow this sort of thing in your jurisdiction, what will your junkyard standards allow? We need to get right with the Lord on this. Your response would be gratefully appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, I open the floor for commissioner comments.
I was just going to mention that the bids did come in for the Sewer South project, and they were surprisingly high. You'd have to check with someone besides me to get the exact numbers, but they were hoping for around 8 or 9 million, and it came in at around 12.
Staff comments.
We'll save it for the discussion.
Oh, that's it. I'm worried now.
Oh, I will tell you guys, I will be gone next week, the week after Thanksgiving, so if you need anything, give it a week.
Did you get permission?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson, do you want, you signed for the other two subjects?
Yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you didn't want to speak at those as well.
okay, I'm good.
Okay. Did she get you?
She got my email. What can I expect from you folks?
Well, you're probably, in my opinion, your best bet would be contacts the code enforcement officer, and he can look up and see if this gentleman has went across any of our codes that we have. That's
I would think so, yeah.
that's the best avenue. We as planning commissioners can't do a whole lot, because we're just planning commission. The council could do something, but your codes enforcement will be your best avenue to find out if he's broken any of our ordinances or anything, and he would give him notice to tell him to straighten it up or whatever. So,
That sounds a little weak.
well, that's, our codes enforcement, he knows all of our codes.
Do you
So-
have codes for your new junkyard that you're talking about?
Well, this wouldn't be a junkyard issue, this would be a business issue, because he's not a junkyard, he's an actual business, so,
He's got quite a junkyard.
but he's not classified as a junkyard. At least, I know where you're talking about, because I go by there quite frequently.
Okay, well then you know where my place is.
I know exactly where your place is at.
Come see us.
Okay. Go ahead, Dave.
Just wanted to ask one question, if you don't mind. Do you have no trespassing signs all along the boundary of your property,
We do,
and they're violating that?
that's correct.
So there's a code violation right there.
there's a
and
violation
legal-
right there.
A legal issue. So
So,
if you catch him violating that, you can take legal recourse.
Well, I think he's going away before the end of the year, and I'll be glad of that. But I would like for this not to happen again, And somebody needs to be tapping on his door, telling him, please do not park your cars in the right-of-way, among other things.
We've got her information, we're gonna.
Okay. Staff's got your information, they will pass it along to the person that needs to have
Well,
it.
I don't want you to harass him right now. I mean, if it's not gone, then there's going to be hell to pay, and I'd like to be the author of that.
All right, ma'am. Thank you very much. Okay, let's open discussion regarding the development of a commercial junkyard ordinance. I'm gonna start the discussion, or what I had proposed.
Point of order, Frankie. We have a letter, I didn't know if you want public comments, we have a letter pertaining to the junkyard ordinance.
Those are all in our backup material. So
And
they're
therefore we're gonna
already,
read them.
they're already part of the record. James, would you consider
Would you
reading?
like those read in? Do you have any sign up for?
I don't have anyone signed up for any of it.
There are 2 public comments that are in the backup material that are part of the record already. We can read those in for you, or you can have them as information.
Pretty lengthy.
Would you like them read?
I would like them read.
James, would you read them, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
The first one is from Ms. Morgan. It's been brought to my attention that a Coney County Planning Commission is working towards adopting a junkyard ordinance like Pickens County. While I am all for safety and aesthetics, I believe this ordinance should not include some of the items the Planning Commission added. First of all, this ordinance creates an undue hardship on small businesses. I quoted fencing for approximately 1/2 acre lot a few years ago, when pricing ranged from $45,000 to $60,000, which is sure to be substantially more today. This is an extreme burden for a small business owner. If this is forced upon an existing business, it can very likely put the owner out of business. While I believe this puts undue hardship on new businesses, current businesses should be grandfathered or exempt from this new proposal. If an existing business wishes to expand at that point, the expansion portion only should be held to the new requirements. Also, car and watercraft service should be added as an exemption to this ordinance. During these times, some replacement parts for cars and watercraft take months to receive from suppliers. I know of cases where watercraft parts were ordered in June and still have not arrived in October. This is out of the service shop's control. Is the Planning Commission also considering a storage lot for watercraft and RVs as part of this ordinance? Have all the existing junkyard owners in the county been contacted regarding this change? To be fair to the citizens impacted in Oconee County, these people should be notified and given a chance to have their concerns addressed. Is this change being brought to clean up the areas around Newry and Lake Kiwi due to new development projects? Thank you for your time. The second is from Ms. Lyles. I would like to go on record voicing my opposition to the proposed junkyard regulations. This has been defeated in the past, and with a more regulation-friendly board has been brought up again. The concerns then and now are rooted in one community not wanting to see things as they drive to their lakefront homes. They do not take into consideration the fact that they live in a farming community in an unzoned part of the county. They should not be able to decide what the property owners who live on the property outside their subdivision is allowed to do with their land just because they don't like the way it looks. This is a slippery slope to regulating other things that they don't like the looks of. They've been trying for years to get Mr. Marcingo and do not consider that the things they call eyesores and junk is how he pays his bills. This group also tried their best to keep commercial poultry houses out off of farmland in this community. It is time that the county stop giving in to the voices of the few just because they are loud. It is not the popular opinion of the people in this county to be told what they can do with their own land. They put their taxes just like everyone else and deserve peace and respect. They deserve to be left alone as long as it stays in their property and isn't in violation of DHEC standards. This is not the time to be passing new regulations on small businesses or anyone else that is suffering in this economy. Furthermore, this is a personal agenda for the commission member from one of our districts whose family and neighbors have been after this gentleman for years. They were also instrumental in the petition to deny permits for a poultry farm in their neighborhood. Anything that they don't like, they try to shut down. It is time to shut it down and show them they are not entitled to tell their neighbors how to manage their personal property. If the commission does not take a stand against this attack now, it will continue. A reminder that zoning and regulations were never supposed to be in the outlying parts of the county. It only passed the referendum because it stated that it would not be inflicted on parts of the county that did not want it. But the commission keeps trying to creep into those areas under the disguise of it being only for commercial use. With all due respect, I think I speak for a large part of the county when I say stay off our land, out of our business. We pay our taxes and obey the law and just want to be left alone. We don't try to bother our neighbors and just ask politely that they do the same. The lakeside homes are an eyesore to us when we are fishing or recreating on the lakes with their docks and all the stuff on them. But we don't bother them. It's time we return to honoring the landowner and their right to do as they so choose with their personal property.
Okay, with that, I will open up discussion. And I had referred to a part of this ordinance that I wanted to remove out of it because it referred to licensing, and fees for required permits and such as that, and we can't center out one business in the county, excuse me, and require them to have licensing when we don't do that for the rest of the businesses in the county. So, on page 4 of 4 here, it says, right under where it says section 6, provisions for administration, A and B, I would like stricken, the whole part of it stricken out of this.
Can you be
Could you
more
repeat that?
specific, please? Are you talking about all of section 6?
No, I said A and B,
Okay, thank you.
permitting and licensing procedures. And B refers to fees for required permits shall be established and published by county council. We don't require any other company to have fees or licensing, so we can't require our junkyards to do anything different other than what the rest of the businesses do. So that part A and B, I'd like stricken off of this, removed completely. That's my motion.
Second?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? I'm sorry. For A, are you wanting to strike A1 or A 1 through 5?
All.
All.
Because let me give my reasoning for that. The DHEC, they have to go through DHEC to get all of what DHEC requires. There's no reason for us to have an ordinance duplicating what is already in state law. The compliance, all this stuff, the rest of this stuff is what is already being done by state. Why do we need to try to duplicate it in an ordinance for the county? And with the exception of the retail license, the state does all this stuff. We don't require any other business to have a license, so all of A, 1 through 5, and then B is what I would like stricken.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Item 3 under A. Do we require, if somebody says they're going to start a business, do we require an approval of a site plan from you for that?
If they're gonna build something, yes.
If they're going to build something, would adding something to vacant land constitute building something?
Like even a pole barn, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we strike number 3 from there, it's still being picked up somewhere else?
So potentially, yes. If they're a structure, if it is, I would assume they'd have an office of some kind. But I would expect that with, you're creating an ordinance to regulate a commercial junkyard, you would want to designate the portion of the property, including longer setbacks. There's some additional that you would want in earlier parts of this, you would want a site plan that would appropriately show that on a schematic somehow, that they are in compliance with other parts of this ordinance.
The reason I ask is if they say they have two lots, they have their office on one lot, but they've got 10 acres over here that they're actually going to be storing. Right now, it's just raw land.
Correct.
If we remove 3, is it picked up somewhere else?
Not if they're on two separate parcels.
But they still have to fall under the other regulations, though. They just wouldn't have to have a site plan.
Not for a parcel they're not using with any structure.
How important is that?
I think it's important to the earlier parts of this ordinance that speak to the land use elements of it.
Okay. If they don't comply to the other parts, they get tagged somehow, flagged, somebody stops something, or no?
So right now, there is no commercial junkyard permit, there is no review from the county at all.
We want to consider writing 3 in somewhere, if not leaving it as a standalone item.
3, 4, and 5 would be the ones that I would think need to get removed and put somewhere else if you're taking the entire list away from A.
Even though they are being picked up somewhere else, just as a,
Street numbers already, they'd have to have that.
Right, again, so if they're just a standalone lot that's a separate parcel that is not picked up, if any, I guess they could get an encroachment permit, that would be a way to pick it up for an E911.
the 911 may be for the office, like you said, and there's the half acre that's under its own TMS number, unrelated to the 10 acres. I think we ought to consider 3, 4, and 5, putting it as a standalone somewhere. I don't know about this, do we do a certificate of compliance for other things?
Yeah, so you do a CO or a CC.
Yeah, okay, for everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think 3, 4, and 5 maybe should be stuck somewhere.
But why are we wanting to require a valid commercial junkyard permit when we don't require,
That's what you're establishing now.
well,
That's
that's,
what this is. Do you want commercial junkyards regulated?
but we don't, they shouldn't have to go get permits or licensing from the county because no other business does. And number 5 is a valid commercial junkyard permit.
Just like you would get a building permit or a commercial building permit or a electrical permit if you wanted to run power to a shed.
You're getting a permit to store.
Would that not come through the state? If they were gonna do a junkyard, wouldn't they have to get a permit through the state to have a junkyard?
I mean, they are regulated by the state, but I don't know what permits they are requiring. They don't share those with us.
I think if somebody's identifying themselves, I agree about the licensing and things like that, if we don't require other companies to license. And I agree that septic tanks are not up to us, they're up to DHEC as to the rules and regs there. But I do think that if I'm building a shed, I've got to go get a build permit. And if I'm having electricity hooked up down to the dock, I've got to go pull a permit for that as well. I think if I'm storing junk something on 10 acres and calling it a commercial business, I should probably let somebody come look at it and say, this is what I'm doing.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I received some feedback about the junkyard discussion and thought it would be helpful to provide some context of how we got here and why. And this kind of relates to this letter from Lucretia Morgan, when she says, have all the existing junkyard owners in the county been contacted? Junkyards, the idea about regulating a junkyard or creating an ordinance goes back to March 2, 2020, 2.5 years ago. 4 of us on this commission were not here. That's 2 chairmen ago. That's Gwen McPhail. So Gary wasn't here, I wasn't here, Mr. Nix wasn't here, and Mr. Williams wasn't here. At that time, I guess Adam was the planning department guy, and he helped kind of, I guess, organize the conversation, pick your list of priorities, and it was RV park, commercial development, junkyard, and multifamily. And it was Mr. Johnson and Mr. Pearson said, let's put junkyards as number 2. So the commission has been struggling and talking about junkyards for 2.5 years. In August of 2020, many people from the industry came and voiced their opinions about it. So yes, Ms. Morgan, that was taken care of. As a matter of fact, Stacy Lyles, who wrote the second letter, was on the commission at the time. She was the lone dissenter, and her opposition to it failed. It was pushed forward 6-1. So what has happened in these last 2.5 years with junkyards? I found in Mike Smith's old file, you guys remember Commissioner Smith, a notice from WGOG News dated October 2020 about a fire at the privately run recycling business on Old Clemson Highway. The Kiwi Fire Department went for assistance. It took an hour to control the fire. So I thought about this and I thought, well, what's the deal? So I contacted Chief Shirley and I said, do you have any stats on how many times you've been out to Old Clemson Highway and have dealt with fires? And he said, 5 times in 18 months. So I guess that, when I think of that, I think, why would a business that's not paying for a permit get to use resources of the county for free? Because that's really what's going on. If you don't have skin in the game, you're not helping maintain roads, you're not paying for your fire, EMS, or police. 47% of the budget is public safety, and that comes from our tax revenue. So if businesses in the unincorporated areas are not going to pay taxes, can anybody else say, well, they don't, should I? So that's a question to think about. Second thing that's happened in the last 2.5 years is Teslas have come into Oconee County. There was an incident down in that Fairplay area where a Tesla rolled. It was towed to Jim's down there, and they couldn't put it out. And so it was foam, and all the foam went into Lake Hartwell, I am told. So I asked, and then I did my own little research, and there was an incident with a Tesla rollover in California, and the battery spontaneously combusts. For 3 weeks, a wrecked Tesla sat in a junkyard, and they thought they put it out, and a couple days later, it would ignite. And this went on for 3 weeks until they dug a hole and stuck it in there and covered it. They didn't know what to do. So Teslas and these lithium-ion batteries are an issue. So when I asked Chief Shirley, I said, what do you guys do with putting out these fires that these Teslas create? He said we can use 4,500 to 28,000 gallons of water to put one Tesla out. A fire truck, 4,500 gallons is the equivalent to 3 to 4 fire trucks. So I didn't do the math and extrapolate it out for 28,000, how many fire trucks that is, but it's a heck of a lot of water. So who's paying for that, and what does it cost for the fire to show up? And again, that's another resource. If you go to the Tesla website, it says right on there, do not submerge vehicle due to fire. Use large amounts of water. Monitor for 24 hours. Possible battery reignition. Tesla, let's see. They would really like you to use a thermal imagery camera, but I don't know if that's in our county. Due to possible reignition, the car should be stored in an open area at least 50 feet from any exposure. So if a junkyard is going to accept a Tesla, it has to be super careful on where it's putting it, because it's no guarantee that the battery is doused. And here, similar to conventional and other electric and hybrid vehicles, a burning battery releases toxic vapors and heated gases. This may include volatile organic compounds, hydrogen gas, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, soot, particulates containing oxides of nickel, aluminum, lithium, copper, cobalt, and hydrogen fluoride. Responders should protect themselves with full PPE, including an SCBA, that's a breathing apparatus, and take appropriate measures to protect civilians downwind from the incident. So this is a serious threat to the people of Oconee County. Knowing this, I would hate to not take some measures to protect the people of these biohazards. The problem is really the lithium ion cells in the battery and the cobalt. The problem is there is no recycling mechanism for the batteries. I mentioned this to our own Mr. Councilman Kane, who is on the SCAC, that's the South Carolina Association of Counties, and he's on the Land Use, Natural Resources, Transportation Steering Committee, and he did his own research, and he came up with this idea for the steering committee. Electric vehicles continue to grow. Concerns have been raised regarding the handling and disposal of lithium-ion batteries that power such vehicles. Currently, the lithium-ion battery industry lacks a clear path to large-scale economic recycling. The problem is the price of cobalt. Cobalt is instrumental in these batteries, and right now it's cheaper to use mined cobalt, brand new, and more expensive to use recycled cobalt. So no one's going to recycle because there's no money in it. So Mr. Kane requested that the steering committee support legislation and regulations that provide guidelines for the proper disposal of lithium batteries. So you couple that with a executive order that our governor has just signed, accelerating the production of electric vehicles, initiatives to create more of these, but we've got this serious problem with the batteries and the biohazards that it is.
Point of order. I'm trying to understand how your discussion of one example of
Because they're coming.
Tesla applies to this permitting piece that we're discussing amending.
Because it's not clear that there's a way to satisfactorily deal with the spontaneous combustion of these cars. They are the wave of the future. We are a forward-thinking body. They're coming, and South Carolina is going to be producing more of them. Duke Power has said that they're going to put electric charging stations for the EVs in Walhalla. It's coming. It's just another facet of the life of a junkyard to accept these cars, to not accept these cars. I don't know, but if they're not permitted, they're not paying for the help that they can get. Last thing, any regulation the commission might suggest is intended to preserve public safety by preventing fire, protect public health by preventing the spread of disease, and to serve the general welfare by preventing harm to the environment. So in terms of connection to the comp plan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I found 7, and they all say encourage, protect the environment, focus on safety, reduce blight, protect natural resources. Public safety needs to be reviewed, protect the waterways, protect existing neighborhoods. So this is not anti-junkyard. This is how can we protect the community at large from a future incident, from future happenings in the county.
Could I address Mr. Nick's question real quick?
Go ahead.
I was assuming that some of what she's talking about, Mr. Nix, is due to the lack that we don't have any kind of permitting or licensing. And right now, we don't even know where we have junkyards. I mean, one time I asked for, how many junkyards do we have in the county? Nobody knows because they're not permitted.
DHEC doesn't permit junkyards.
Nobody
Commercial
here knew at
junkyards.
the time, I can tell you that. I don't know if we could go somewhere else to find the information. That's not the point. The point is, because we don't even ask them to let us know they exist through a process like permitting, then we don't know they exist.
So do junkyards have to accept electric cars, or
I don't know.
is it an option?
My question.
Go ahead.
I may be wrong, we may be thinking of something else, but it seems like in junkyards, there was something, when we listened to some of the folks from junkyards, that said they have to remove oil and they have to remove fuels. In your research, is the state coming in and saying they have to remove batteries?
That's what Mr. Kane has proposed.
Because I thought that you also had to remove the battery, and I don't know if battery is defined. Is battery not
You
defined?
don't have to remove the battery.
Okay, just the oil and the fuel. So the state at some point will have to end up addressing the Tesla.
Yeah.
The question becomes is, do we address it as a county before the state?
Okay, you were talking about them having permits, having a license. We don't require any other business in this county that's in the unincorporated areas that they don't have to have a license. They get the same exact service as that junkyard does. If their building catches on fire, fire truck comes and puts it out. They pay their taxes. Junkyard pays their taxes, just like that business pays his taxes. So we are getting money for the resources they use when they use them. We don't make money, even the municipalities do not make money off of having every business to have a license. They don't make money off of that. And we can't require one business to have a license and not require every single business. Ward Warner, all of these companies that's in the county, we would have to go back and make every one of those have a business license.
Well,
And that's not gonna happen.
I'd like to understand why is that? I mean,
You can't center out one
no,
person or business and make them do something different than everybody else.
do you think there's a law that says that we can't ask junkyards, commercial junkyards, to have a permit process? I don't think there is. I haven't seen that.
I agree with you. There is not a law. It's a litigation issue for the county.
It's not a permit process of them having to meet certain standards to open this junkyard. What everybody seems to be talking about, at least I'm thinking, y'all talking about requiring them to have a business license, and that is something we don't require anybody else in this county to have. My daughter just opened up a business. She didn't have to get a county business license.
I'm for, on your motion, I'm for an amended motion that would omit number 1 and keep 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Number 2 duplicate is a duplicate.
I know, but it doesn't hurt anything, and it may be referenced somewhere else in the document, so I have no problem leaving number 2 in there.
Alex wants to say something.
Go ahead, James.
Alex.
Oh, Alex, I'm sorry.
I think
Point of order. Is that a motion, and is anybody going to second that?
There's not a motion on the floor
No.
right now.
So we have no motion, no motions to amend. Currently, we have a
You want
motion
to
on the
amend?
It's a
floor.
motion to amend,
Okay. Restate your motion to amend, please.
okay. You had a motion in to strike, A completely and B. And what my motion is to, instead of doing that, just strike A1 and leave the rest as it is.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So as far as discussing it, a couple,
He's raising his
Can
hand.
I talk for just a second? I think we're getting off track here. I don't think any of these require a business license through the county. The first one is a retail license through the State Department of Revenue. The second one is a permit for a septic tank if they have a septic tank. Part B is for permits, which is the same permit as if you were going to build a home, you have to go get a permit. It's not a business license for the county. It is a permit to build something on that piece of property so that it can abide by the restrictions that are laid out. I don't see anywhere in there where it is a specific business license that needs to be paid every year through the county.
Retail, the word retail?
The retail license is through the state of South Carolina. It is
yeah.
not through Oconee County.
Okay, with that understanding, I'd like to remove my amendment from consideration. And I don't see any reason why we need to approve the motion.
We have a motion and a second.
I've got one quick thing to say regarding the DHEC septic. This says that a permit from South Carolina to DHEC for any septic tank upon the premises. DHEC, they purge their files after 7 years. You have a house on there with a toilet, and now they're opening a business and doing something next door on that 10 acres next door. But the business address is still that half acre of that old house. We're saying that if there's a septic tank, which there is on the old house that they now are putting an address to, that they have to have a DHEC permit. And DHEC won't have a permit for that.
So,
But they could get a CO as a part of renovating that home into a business. They would get a certificate of occupancy, which would be number 3. But if they've got a flushing toilet, they're not gonna be able to do that without actually starting the process with DHEC. And it's not really gonna be the same kind of permit. I would eliminate 2, I would eliminate 1, but I don't understand if the retail license is not from us, I don't know. I don't think that that should be the only business getting a permit. But I do think if we do a certificate of occupancy for anything else and we require a permit to run an electrical line to a light pole, then I don't see why we wouldn't have somebody say, hey, yeah, your fence is the right height. Yeah, you've cleared. Yeah, you've put up whatever screening requirement might be needed.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make another comment, is that we don't have to vet every bit of this right now, because as we know, if this goes to the county council, there'll be opportunity to go back through a lot of this. So it seems like a waste of time to get into a lot of these particulars right now, because we don't know how supportive that the county council would be of having passing a first reading on this even. So as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of a package deal. It's like, okay, here's an ordinance that we got from Pickens County. It makes sense. We've reviewed it. Let's go ahead and pass this and get it moving forward and see what happens.
I'm never a fan of passing something that we haven't tried to make our best effort at. I think our only sticking points are 1 and 2, potentially.
I have a question, Chair. So we said 1 and 2 are repetitive, 3 is possibly repetitive, 4 possibly repetitive. 5, is that the heartburn? 5, the valid commercial junkyard permit from the county planning department? Is that the one that's giving you the heartburn as far as being different from all the other businesses? Or I'm trying to understand, and then the fees, of course, that would stem off of 5, correct? Alpha 5.
Well, they're gonna have fees when if they go to DHEC, get a septic tank permit.
Right.
They pay a fee for that. DHEC's already got that. They got that price set out. So certificate of compliance they get through the county planning department.
Through code, that'll be through building codes.
Well, but it's still your area.
And they have to get that
So
anyway.
they get
so that's
that anyway.
repetitive, correct?
You what?
That's repetitive, correct?
I
Did
feel
we
that.
discuss that as being repetitive, or are we not sure?
I feel this is repetitive because we can have some of this same stuff in other parts, because this thing is nowhere near ready to be even halfway sent to council. Because if we send something like this to council, it's gonna be voted down and then that's it. We have to start all over again. But the valid commercial junkyard permit, do we have to get a valid permit from any business?
No.
So to me, that one shouldn't even be there. If we're not making BorgWarner get a valid commercial permit,
Thank you, Chair. That answers my question.
then we shouldn't make junkyards do it. Now, I agree that we need to know where these businesses are. I mean, I would love to see the old Yellow Pages where you could look down and see all of these businesses, but we don't have anything like that. We don't require for anybody, and we don't do Yellow Pages anymore, so there we go. But a lot of these are repetitive, and we can add them in other sections as we see fit if we think we need them to be there, but in this particular instance, all these together don't need to be there.
Is the permit a permit of having that business, or is the permit a permit of compliance that they put up a fence and that they met their setbacks and that they understand what their obligation is to keep the water clean and all of that kind of stuff?
From what I understand, and I haven't been able to get a hold of Pickens County yet. I've called them 3 different times. But this is, for the most part, this is a license. It's a valid commercial junkyard permit. So that would be like giving them permission to have a junkyard, and that would be, technically, it'd be a business license for them to have a junkyard.
But for clarity, you really don't know that for
I
sure.
haven't gotten in touch with them. I'm gonna get more clarification
I think that's
later. But
important.
that can be added into other parts of this ordinance if it needs to be put in there. But in all of these in this order here, we should remove this, and then if we see they need to be somewhere else, we can always add it back in there. It's not like we're sending this to council tonight.
Well, is it fair to say that any business in the municipalities in the borders of Walhalla or Seneca, Westminster, if you have your business there, you have a business license?
If you're inside the
Correct.
city limits.
So why is it different if you're outside the city limits? If you intend to use any of the resources, our roads, our police, our fire, EMS,
Business
why
license
not?
doesn't pay for that.
Well, it's a contribution too, but why not, get some identification of these businesses, and just because they're in the unincorporated areas, well, I don't know why, it's like special treatment to me.
But no business in the county has ever had a business license that I know of.
Well,
And-
if there's multiple fires at a barbecue place, maybe there needs to be one. If there's,
But how is a $15 permit, in most cases, how's a $15 permit gonna pay for having the fire truck there 4 different times?
James, what's typically on a business permit? Do you know?
For the city?
Yeah.
I don't know what they charge for them. I would assume it's less than $50.
I know restaurants go by how many seats are in there. Like if you got 300 seats, then you pay a certain amount. If you got less than that, you pay a different amount. I do know that part, but other than,
I would imagine it's name, address, size, you said seats, proof of insurance. I would imagine every business wants to have some kind of liability. Do you have it or not? Do all the junkyards, do they have insurance or not? Those kind of common sense things, just protect, just do
okay.
what's best for the people in the county.
Let's do this, if it's okay with y'all. James, will you find out what is required from Seneca to get a business permit?
I can-
Well,
I
man,
can- I can tell
we
you
got
what
Alex
it is.
here, I'm sorry.
The business license in Seneca is a base fee, and then it's a portion of your revenue from the previous year. So it's if you're bringing in $10 million, you're gonna pay more than somebody that sold $50 worth of stuff.
What if you're a new business?
But again, well, then you would pay the minimum amount, $50 or whatever they charge for the minimum amount. But again, I think this is a valid commercial junkyard permit. I would assume when Borg Warner built their building, they went out and got a permit. I don't know how much different that is from this. Is this an annual permit, or is this I would like to establish a commercial junkyard? Oh, I have to pay a permit fee. All right. I now have a permit to build my junkyard. Is that what that is, or is this an annual
That would be
business
my
license?
interpretation, that this is an application, just like you'd have a subdivision application, that you will go through the criteria of what a subdivision is and needs. You would go through what a junkyard is and needs, and whether or not it meets it, and you check it off, and it is approved.
And at the end, it is a stamped valid commercial junkyard permit, and then should there be a violation of some sort, I assume at some point it could be revoked. Probably not, because I don't think we go back to houses after they're built and say,
And
They're
are
gonna
permits
revoke
renewed,
That's
Andy?
what code enforcement is for, and they can condemn houses.
okay, so that would be the same circumstance.
Could we ask James to go back through and look at potential rewording of this so that we are dealing with a permit of compliance, not a license of activity? That they come in front of the planning commission and say, or the planning department and say, we would like to do this, just as anybody would say, I would like to add a garage to my house, or I would like to add a light pole in my garden, or whatever. They've got to come and get a permit to do those things, which is a permit of compliance. After you've installed it, the department comes out and goes, yep, you installed that correctly based on what we told you to install, and it's then approved. I think we should have a permit of compliance that you understand all the rules. Yep, okay, this is the rules. We'll come check it after you've started establishing your setbacks, your fencing, whatever else we put down here. I don't think we should have some annual licensing, especially not on earnings when there's no other business in the county that we're doing that. We're not doing it to the lawn maintenance guys, saying we want a percentage of your earnings. But I would like to see wording about compliance.
Would you feel better about application from permit, a valid junkyard application from the county planning office, or an approved application? I'm just spitballing, like, obviously, but if it's just that one word that is the
Say it again?
application as opposed to permit, I don't know, like,
Number 5.
so like the cell tower is a special application, right? Because cell towers have different FTC compliance issues. So they have a special permit that they have to get. They have an annual inspection, annual report that's due every year. They have an annual fee for the operation of the cell tower in the county.
I'm not looking at, I would not like something annually. I think that
And I'm not suggesting, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah,
trying to give
yeah.
you an example. So
We
the
could
question
just-
previously was,
I would,
We could just state a commercial junkyard application.
Initial
Have to be
application.
valid, or y'all
Initial
wouldn't say.
application. Initial application.
Initial application. All right, so I guess, how would I do it? Remove my
you
motion?
never made a motion, so that just was discussion, and you started with what you were concerned
Well, I made a
about.
motion and Dave seconded.
Okay, so
So,
So you need a motion to amend your motion that's on the floor.
What was your motion? I don't remember.
It was to
To
delete
remove-
Alpha and Bravo.
entirely.
Or we could vote on it, vote it down and start all over again.
good.
all right, any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
1, 2,
2.
Opposed?
4, motion fails.
Now, could you reword that one sentence?
You want to make a motion?
Well, we don't know if we have to do a motion, or we can just direct him to do that,
I
because
think
he's
he's-
gonna bring.
I'd like him to come back with A and B, something cleaner that meets what we all kind of are talking about that we want. I'd like to make a motion that James revisit A and B,
Section 6.
Section 6, and come back with something that deals with initial compliance, whether it's called certificate of compliance, whether it's called whatever, that is a permit that I want to do this, I want to do it within the regulations, and there's going to be oversight and knowledge by the planning department that this is happening on XYZ property. But that there's not some annual licensing language, not some annual due, and not some fees for doing their job.
Is there a second?
Oh, we didn't have to get,
Second. Any further discussion on that? I
Gary?
second.
Oh, or not, sorry.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed?
No.
Passes 5-1.
I'm gonna make a statement, y'all, if you don't mind. Ma'am, we usually just have public comment during the times that we've got. We don't allow the public to talk afterwards. If the commission would like to allow her to speak now,
One sentence.
It's okay with me.
y'all-
Since she
I'm
signed
okay
up,
with speaking.
since she had actually
See, well, see, she did actually sign up for this one, so if you'll step up to the,
I would not like a junkyard near me that had Tesla batteries in it, and I want you to seriously consider what Teresa Spicer is offering as an issue for batteries. They need to be removed from any vehicle before they're put into any place that is considered a junkyard. And they need to be sent back to the Tesla factory for recycling. They are dangerous. I would not park one near my house. You need to take this seriously. That's all I've got to say. Good night, people.
Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you for letting me speak.
No problem. Is there something we could put in the ordinance that would not allow them to have these electric cars in the junkyard with the batteries in them? They'd have to remove them and dispose of them somewhere else other than leaving them in the junkyards?
Where do they go, though?
I don't
When that
know.
happened in, down the Fairplay, it was a wreck off 85, so it was just the closest.
I mean, I think that's a problem everybody's facing.
Yeah, I don't
Everybody's
know.
banning them, but
I did
they're
see
gonna end up in somebody's backyard.
I did see an article where they dug this huge 12-foot gorge and stored a bunch of batteries and covered them up. But, I mean, I don't know that we have a place to do that around here.
And it's not good for the well water and the environment and all that other stuff.
Well, Gary?
I think we could include in this document, something that talks about conformity to all manufacturers' lithium battery guidelines. That would cover things like keeping it 50 feet away from anything else that might catch on fire. But at least that way, the manufacturer is saying what the guidelines are, and then they would be required to meet the guidelines, which could change over time.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see in writing what that is, what those, that we maybe could add into a sentence in there.
This is what Mr. Kane proposed.
No, the Tesla.
Tesla. Here you go. I mean, it's an issue with the battery, but then it made me pause when it said protect civilians downwind. I thought, it's not good.
That's because of the particulates.
The vapors, yeah, I mean, and I just don't want to subject my family to noxious fumes or biohazards. I mean, it's something, she's right, it needs to be taken seriously. What do we do about it? I don't know, it's so trendy, more and more EVs are gonna come. What do you do?
Can I give this
I like
to
the one
James,
you
let
said,
him
lithium
make
and
copies and send
non-Tesla.
this to us? We'll all have a copy of it?
Sure.
Lithium batteries.
James, I'm gonna give you this after the meeting where you make copies and send us.
Well,
Yeah, we'll just
in
do this.
cars, we need.
I'm gonna lay right here, okay, thank you.
Yeah. I don't need it, Frankie.
And well, you'll get another one.
Yeah,
But
fine.
that has Mr. Kane's recommendation?
No, it doesn't. Mr. Kane's recommendation is, oh, did I give you
Yeah,
that?
you gave me that one too.
Oh, perfect, okay,
Okay.
sorry.
That has Mr. Kane's recommendation and the paperwork from
And Tesla.
Tesla about the batteries. And you think we need anything else, the rest of it?
Not unless you want the stats from Chief Shirley on how many times he's answered calls to the junkyard on Old Clemson Highway and the amount of water it took.
Does anyone want that?
Might as well.
Let's
I
just
got
go
it.
ahead and add it in. If you'll, I'll give it to you after the meeting, and if you'll make a thing and send it all in email to us. That way we'll have that information.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
we still on junkyards?
yes.
All right. I want to make a motion to amend our junkyard ordinance. I would like to amend Section 2, Part A, to say the purpose of this article is to provide for the regulation of, adding the word expansion of existing commercial junkyards, and proposed to add in new commercial junkyards, da-da-da.
All right, say it again.
Section 2, Part Alpha. I want to amend the first line of that statement to say, the purpose of this article is to provide for the regulation of expansion of existing commercial junkyards and proposed new commercial junkyards. And in addition to that, I would like to strike Section 5 in its entirety.
What is Section 5?
Section 5 is the applicability of this regulation to existing commercial junkyards.
Section 5,
And the reason for that is I'm not a fan of backfit.
Yeah, me neither.
And Mr. or Mrs. Morgan basically provided the basis for that concern.
What the fence cost?
Yeah, that and other costs.
Well, but what Mrs. Morgan didn't say was, what was the composition of her fence? Is it 10 feet? Is it 6 feet? Is it chain link? The cheapest is barbed wire. I mean, I did my own research on the cost of half-acre fence, and it was way lower than that. So this is a little bit, doesn't have enough detail to tell me how she got that number. That's my opinion.
Mr. Nix, would you be willing to make two separate motions? Because I think I could be in favor of one, but not the other.
You can't do one without the other. You can't change 2 alpha line 1 and exclude backfit of existing junkyards to these requirements without deleting section 5.
Oh, okay, I see your point.
They go together.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Chair?
Well, we need a second on the motion. And I'll second the motion to open it up for discussion.
You go first. Did you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, the only thing I just want to say was, this is the issue that Mike Smith brought to us over and over again and referred to as the elephant in the room. You know, what are we going to do? Are we going to grandfather people in, or are we not?
I agree with you on that statement. It is the elephant in the room.
Can I read you something from the paper? This is Tell Willie, for what it's worth. She wants to thank citizens for Oconee County for taking a stance on littering, and she encourages everybody to keep Oconee County beautiful by picking up trash when seen. It's the community spirit that makes the Golden Corner a great place to live. This leads me to this observation. On Old Clemson Highway, not far from the intersection of SC Highway 130 and just down the street from a church and an accompanying cemetery, is what appears to be an open landfill. I believe it claims to be a metal recycling center that has strung unsightly piles of refuse along the roadway. It looks to be growing each week. Negotiating this part of the highway is a challenge because many customers leave their vehicles partly on the road or often temporarily block the road entirely. You would do the county residents and visitors a great favor by checking on the status of this operation with regard to code enforcement. Whereas I support our business community 100%, this business is an eyesore, a navigation hazard, a potential deal killer for folks interested in residing in Oconee County. Thank you for your attention. This is September 23, 2022. People are noticing, people are asking for help. I mean,
That sounds strangely familiar, what we just heard.
But
are you accusing me of writing this? Nice
No,
try.
no, no.
No.
a recycling center is different from a commercial junkyard.
Okay, well, he claims, he is a junkyard. You know that, Honeycutts.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just heard recycling, and that's something totally different. I mean, we got a recycling place down on Old Clemson Highway that's right on the side of the road. It's been an eyesore for several years. Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
My thought or concern about this is where we talk about expansion of existing junkyards. I'm not a fan of taking somebody's business that they've been doing for a long time and telling them, oh, now you've got to change the way you do that. Not a fan of that at all. But when we place these regulations on new businesses, the likelihood of the new business going, man, that's a lot of expense, maybe I won't do that, potentially means that the existing junkyards are going to be expanding. And when they expand, we've not done our due diligence in trying to protect that expansion, trying to manage that expansion.
I guess with the way the county grows, you can make the assumption that they're gonna expand, because we're gonna have more people, more stuff.
Unless they build new ones. But again, if based on these regulations, people may choose not to build a new one.
Maybe.
And so there is going to be, we have to assume that there's going to be expansion with existing. So while I'm not a fan of telling somebody they've got to take their existing business and change the way they do it, I am a fan of saying, if you expand that existing business by X percent,
And this does that.
And that's what
This
his
does that.
change
Okay.
is. Yes,
It does that.
yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
It doesn't affect you now.
That's why I changed 2 alpha, line 2 alpha.
Okay.
Want me to read it again?
But maybe so, because maybe I'm missing that
Okay.
point.
So we strike existing non-conforming commercial junkyards. Section 5 is the backfit rule. Okay, so we strike the backfit rule.
Okay?
And then section 2 alpha, we say, in the first line, we change it to say, the purpose of this article is to provide for the regulation of expansion of existing commercial junkyards and proposed new commercial junkyards.
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
And then you do away
So
with
then all of this falls in based on that expansion.
Correct.
Okay,
Then you get the rules.
gotcha. Yep, I like it then.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion fails. It's tied.
3-3. All right. Is there anything else that y'all want to do tonight on junkyard, or do y'all want to put this off until, or,
I see what James comes back with,
Yeah.
with the other.
yeah, see what James comes back with, and then we'll bring it up at our next meeting? Oh, with that in mind, we are scheduled for 2 meetings in December. I would like to make a motion that we cancel our second meeting and only have 1 meeting in December, which will be the 5th or 6th.
Fifth.
December the 5th would be our only meeting in December. We would cancel the one that is the Monday, week
19th.
of Christmas.
I like that.
Second.
Oh, is that a motion?
Is there any discussion?
It's a great idea.
Hell, yeah, I love
All those in favor, say aye.
It's unanimous.
So we
Okay,
meet
that
one
way-
time in December,
One time.
December 6th, yeah.
December 5th.
The 5th.
Early first.
The first Monday in December we'll meet, and that's it, till next year. Also, we're starting on the subdivision development standards. I would also like to make one other motion, if y'all will bear with me. I would like to get James to look into these urban planners, find out some cost, and see what we need to, what we need in that, for as price-wise, and then we will know if we decide that's the route we want to go, we can send a letter to council with saying, hey, we found this company, this is the price, we're asking for this amount of money.
Just as a point of procurement for county government, the typical way to do that for something fairly expansive would be through a request for proposals, which would have qualified firms submit submittals to the county for the scope of work that we would develop. And we can start developing a scope of work. And then based on qualifications is how you hire a service like that. And then you can enter into negotiations with a firm that is pre-selected through a RFP process. But we can start working on a scope of work that you would like to authorize.
Okay, that may be the
I
route.
second.
That may be what I'm asking then.
I think, yeah, I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands that we're not gonna come back and say like, it's $2,500 and we're gonna be done. And-
Yeah, right.
It's,
Because it's gonna be involved, I want the public involved as well with this. Like, sort of, almost like we did the comp plan. Maybe not as intense, but, so that's my motion, Mr. Garland's second. Any further discussion on this? Does everybody understand what it is? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now, let's go, I will open the floor for a discussion of subdivision development standards. We have in our backup, this one section here that Mr. Nix brought up. The subdivision is 30 acres or 50 lots. Of 30 acres or 50 lots shall have a maximum density of 2 units per acre. The underlying zoning district shall determine the density for subdivisions of less than 30 acres or 50 lots. Higher density projects could be considered through planned development district applications. Is that exactly what you were saying last week or 2 weeks ago?
I don't think so.
I was the one that made the motion to ask James to do that.
Oh,
I think it was to clarify what the wording would look like. And I'm not sure what the ramifications are of trying to implement something like this. And I think that's one of the things that we still need to find out. We went through a lot of, we went through a lot of work to get to what these changes might make, and we found out that in some cases, it would be more dense, and some it would be less, more lots, in some cases it'd be less lots. But, James, did you have any, excuse me?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you to check with James to see if we could find out what his opinion is on this, because I don't feel like I have enough information to make a determination.
James?
I think it's a pretty broad tool to try and accomplish what you're looking to, and it does eliminate a lot of the higher density, multifamily, more affordable housing options that are typically available. That's why I added on my own the higher density projects, just as a caveat that people would know that all high density projects were not eliminated through this automatically, that there was still one mechanism that was in place from the original zoning ordinance that did allow for higher density projects through that planned development district, which is a much more involved subdivision application essentially.
And I spoke with Mr. Root a little bit about similar, and he said when we come up with this, we'll need, if we want, like, just say we wanted half-acre lots for everybody. Everybody gets a half-acre lot if they're gonna build a subdivision. We also need to consider some places that we will allow the third of an acre. Like if you have sewer, you get to build 3 on an acre. If you don't have sewer, you can only build 2. Because of like we were talking last meeting about, you need about a half acre to do your septic tank and your lines and everything else. So it's almost required you having a half acre of land to put a house because, of any size. So we'd have to come up with something that says you can have high density housing here, or there's sewer available. If no sewer is available, these are the standards you have to follow. Something to that effect.
This wording is not what I came up with. I'll say that.
Alex?
Have we had anybody apply through the planned development district
Not
since?
since I've been here.
Okay. I kind of wonder if that's more of a route we should look at to make it maybe simpler or easier to use. Because I think it was established it seemed like there was something on Lake Hartwell or something a long time ago, and I don't know that anybody ever used it. So,
It's much more involved. It has the ability for the county to negotiate with the developer. It has a requirement for open and green space in it already. It has to be an agreement between both parties. It's not.
yeah. I seem to remember seeing it, but it's been a long time, and I don't know that we've ever seen it again. So.
Mike?
I would love to, while this would probably do something in slowing existing development, I don't want us to get into a piecemeal scenario of trying to come up with a standard. I would love for us to concentrate and focus on, if we have the opportunity to get an urban planner in here to help guide us, whether it be on green space, whether it be on density, whether it be on zoning, whether it be on access, and this road could allow for this kind of development, or this smaller road would only allow for this size development. If we have the opportunity to get an urban planner in, I'd love for us to push on trying to see what that would cost and trying to get that approved before we start throwing things that start, well, we've done this, we've done this, and we've done this, and that's how legislation gets to the 40th Band-Aid, counteracts the first three that we try to do.
Is this a timing thing, like beginning of the year, there's more money in the pot to hire one of these, or does it even matter?
Not really.
So it will depend on the scope of work, obviously, on what the cost would be. But, you know, there is probably money available for something like that.
Mr. Chair, just in reference to her question, it's not a bad time for us to be investigating whether or not this something can be done, because the council will be considering budget matters, and so will the administration on, January, February, March, and then, it's not too early. So that would be good timing.
That's why we did the comp plan. At the beginning of the year, sort of, that way they could add it into the budget and it didn't.
Would it serve us to send a note to council saying we are looking into this because there is a need for X, Y, and Z?
What do you think, James?
That's up to y'all. I think council has also brought this up as well. I think the chairman brought it up at one of the more recent council meetings.
About the urban planner,
About
about an
professional
urban planner?
land planning.
If we send a message saying we're on board with trying to do something like that,
I don't think we necessarily need a formal way of doing that. We could ask our chair to make mention of it.
Because I'll be at the next meeting.
So we don't have to put in writing, make a letter, wanna
No,
do it that way?
I could just mention that on behalf of the Plan Commission, this is what we're looking into, and we want you to be thinking about it. We will, once we find out more and get all our ducks in a row, we'll bring it back to you with everything we need.
because of the outcry in the community of what's taking place as far as inbound traffic into the area.
And please include Ms. Brock in that as well, because she'll have things that she wants to include.
Will you write me up something where I can memorize it, sort of what, I can't,
You can read
my
it.
70-year-old mind forgets things. So if you can do that, I'll do that at the next meeting under public comment. And that way they can be thinking about it, and then once we get them all the appropriate paperwork, then they can come back with us and say, yes, we will.
And then if that fails or it isn't gonna happen for 2 years, then we can figure out something, then start trying to piecemeal something.
Had a volunteer today offer his advice, or with his experience, he offered help. Then Mr. Maury, he's a civil engineer, offer help. I think there's resources in the citizenry of the county, but we'll see. I'd like to go after a hired urban planner, for sure.
Okay, if there's not anything else on subdivision development standards, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.